Okay, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them has now been out for an entire weekend. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm about to spoil the shit out of it. So feel free to watch any other video. Uh, I have a spoiler-free review, so if you want to check that out, go ahead. But this is a spoiler talk for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I'm sorry about the lighting. It is an awful day today for the weather, and it's just not reflecting well on my camera. But let's talk about this. As long as you can hear me, that's the main thing. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Okay. So, what I really like going into this film, and to start off with, is the fact that we have one of our main characters is actually a muggle, or as they call it, a nomad in this film. I'm not going to call it a nomad, or him a nomad. I fucking hate the name nomad. It's just, it's so on the nose. It's like, no match, no magic. And it's like, no, they're fucking muggles. They're muggles, okay? Don't ruin this. So, yeah, we had a muggle played by Dan Fogler, who was very, very good in this film, as I mentioned before. And I really like that he's in this as the main character, because we've seen Muggles before, but we haven't really seen much from the Muggle world. I mean, we were introduced to, the Dursleys, and they were assholes to Harry, and it was like we saw their point of view. They were scared of Harry's magical powers. They were like, "Whoa, man, that shit's not right." But we haven't seen it from a guy's point of view who's actually enthusiastic to see more from this, apart from Arthur Weasley got to see into the Muggle world, kind of. We saw it through his eyes, and that was kind of cool. But it was good to see an actual Muggle interact with wizards this time around. And Dan Fogler does it very well. At first he's sort of like, this is fucking insane. But then, like, as the movie goes on, he actually learns, how these guys work. And it gives us a better understanding of the wizarding world, because there's a character like us in this film, and I really, really like that. I didn't really know, like, when I started watching this film, like, Newt Scamander's in the US, and it's like, okay, fair enough, he wants to buy this birthday present or whatever it is. And at first it's like, wait, why did he bring a suitcase full of magical creatures? Surely that's just prone for disaster. We actually find out that inside his suitcase he's caring for all these magical creatures. He collects them, as I said, like they're Pokemon, and he keeps them in this case, and he looks after them, and he sort of trains them. And he's got a really rare creature in there that he's trying to release back into the US. And that's the reason why this beast is in the suitcase. And that's the reason he's bought the suitcase to the US. Because all these creatures live in the suitcase. He has to bring it to release his other creature. But through a series of mishaps, a fucking one of those swaps and swapping, you know what I mean? They swap suitcases, and he's got this suitcase full of cakes because Kowalski wants this bakery. And Jacob Kowalski has his case of beasts, and that's how our movie comes about. So, yeah, I mean, Colin Farrell in this movie did a good job, but the thing I had a problem with when I mentioned in my non-spoiler review was Ezra Miller's character, Credence. He didn't really need to be in the film. Like, his little sister was like had this dark magic inside her, and that's what we were supposed to believe, but it turned out it was actually Credence, Ezra Miller's character. And it was like, okay, because Colin Farrell's character Graves mentions that he's a squib, and it's like, okay, that's why he's such a creepy little twerp, because he's a squib and he's acting like Filch did, because fair enough. But it turns out he's actually the villain of the film, like Credence is. And it didn't work for me. It didn't mesh well together with the overall plot, because the first half is so light-hearted and so much fun. Apart from this really weird scene with like a chair that tortures you to death, that was dark. But no, the film's light-hearted and fun, and all of a sudden Ezra Miller's character turns into this big ball of smoke and he's destroying the city, and it's like, right, okay. Like, the CG on this ball of blackness isn't great anyway, but it's just, it didn't make sense. It would have made more sense because there's a plot reveal. Turns out that Graves' character is actually Grindelwald, which I really liked, but it would have been better if maybe he was Credence and instead of turned into this big black smoky thing, he turned into Grindelwald and he destroyed everything. But I guess that wouldn't give Graves much of a purpose in the film, because... But then again, why did Graves need to be in the film if Credence is in this film? That stuff didn't mesh together very well, and I wasn't such a big fan of the darker sort of villainous elements of the film. I like the dark stuff that happens, but I wasn't a massive fan of all of the overall, villainous stuff, because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But I will say that the Grindelwald reveal at the end, I knew what was coming, because at the beginning of the movie, like, I didn't guess from the beginning of the movie, but at the beginning of the movie, we see the back of Grindelwald's head, and that's the first shot we see. And then every time we're introduced to Colin Farrell's character Graves, we see him from the back of the head, and they just have suspiciously similar haircuts. And I had myself thinking a few times, I've seen that haircut before. That's Grindelwald's haircut. And then at the end, Newt Scamander does this sort of thing, and he traps him, and he uses a spell to reveal his identity. And I was like, his hair's turning blonde. I guess this was Grindelwald. It was Grindelwald. And Johnny Depp looks really great in all the makeup and everything. He looks really cool as Grindelwald, and I can't wait to see what he does. And for the most part, you know, what I saw from Grindelwald so far, barely anything, but Johnny Depp looks like he's going to pull it off, and he looks pretty good. People were sort of, there was a backlash against him because Johnny Depp's this big star, and it's like all this controversy surrounding him. People were like, I'm not too into this, but actually I cannot wait to see what Johnny Depp can bring to the table in the sequel. And what this movie does is set up a sequel. Now, like I said, there was this whole love plot between Queenie Goldstein and Jacob Kowalski, which it was a little forced. At first, you know, he has this head injury and they have to wipe his memory so he doesn't remember all of this wizarding stuff, but actually they need him for some reason to be, you know, they need him to be the witness to everything that's happened. And then they'll wipe his memory, and the whole film sets it up for him to have his memory wiped, but he plays the character really well and does the comedic stuff really well. But the whole Queenie Goldstein stuff, it was very forced, and I wasn't entirely into it. I didn't buy into it. I mean, it was cute at the end when sort of they sort of have this kiss, and then she wipes his memory because he wants her to wipe the memory and everything. And at the end, he's got his bakery because Newt Scamander loans him or gives him all the money to do it. He has like these magical eggshells that he can use to buy the bakery because he needs what's it called, collateral. So he buys the bakery, and Queenie Goldstein appears, and this is the very last scene of the film as well. It's just him smiling, and he sees her, and it's like, okay, it's set up for him to be in the sequel, and we know that he's probably going to get his memory back, or they're going to tell him everything again. And it's like, okay, cool, but I think a friend of mine actually told me that this would have been a better ending. He said that the end should have been Newt Scamander going back to England, and the very last scene is him writing his Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them book. And the title it comes on a bit like quickly. Tina Goldstein, she sort of just says to Newt Scamander, you should call it Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And he's just sort of like, yeah. And it's like, okay, I guess his love interest named the book. And that's what I mean. Tina Goldstein's another love interest that doesn't really... She's a better character, I guess, but she doesn't really play in as the love interest. Well, I don't know if she was supposed to, because Queenie Goldstein was a clear love interest. I don't know if Tina Goldstein was supposed to be a love interest in the film, but you could tell she sort of is in the end. But I mean, yeah, she names the book, and it would have been a cooler ending if it was Newt Scamander writing the book, and then Dumbledore just sort of appears. You see his figure, and he's talking to Newt, and he says something, and it'd been like, pretty cool. Gets me hyped up for a sequel. See Albus Dumbledore in the sequel facing off against Grindelwald. Have the whole relationship between Grindelwald and Dumbledore. Because I hope they don't cop out with that. Because everybody knows Dumbledore is gay and Grindelwald was his lover. If they cop out with that and don't do that at all, then shame on them. Because that would be pretty cool and the fans would love it. So yeah, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them overall, I really enjoyed. Has its flaws. Like I said, the villainous elements of the film weren't great. Colin Farrell and Ezra Miller did fine. It's just their characters weren't too great, especially Ezra Miller turning into a big ball of black smoke. But overall, the movie's very enjoyable, and I do recommend it to Harry Potter fans. And like I said, it does separate itself from Harry Potter. You've got name drops like Hogwarts and Dumbledore, but you never actually see them, and it feels different. It has sort of a different, you know, tone to it, and it's obviously all set in America as well. I thought I showed the Wizarding School, but it really didn't. They just mention it. But overall, yeah, I definitely recommend you see this film if you're a Harry Potter fan. And if you're not, you'll probably still find enjoyment from it because it's very light-hearted in tone at most parts. And it feels different. So if you don't like Harry Potter, I'd still say give it a go. So let me know what you thought about Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. What do you think of Johnny Depp as Grindelwald? Personally, I love it, but, you know, that's just me. And we haven't seen him properly yet, so once we do, maybe I'll change my mind. Don't think I will, but we'll see. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.